Where do you want to start? You want to start with the Patrick Cripps stuff first?
Kick off Patrick Cripps. Yep.
Okay, so he goes to the trial, which they were always going to do, and given the Rioli, a lot of people thought maybe he was going to get off. Didn't get off last night, so he's going to miss another 2 games, which is a huge blow for Carlton where they're at right now. They lose their skipper. They've already got 2 of their more important parts of their midfield unable to play at the moment in Hewitt and Kennedy.
Yep.
And then there's the personal side to it too. I would think Patrick Cripps should be somewhere around abouts in the Brownlow medal voting, would he, or not?
No, I think in the back half of the year, probably not. He might be up there in the first half, but as a captain of the club, he'd be taking responsibility for the fact that those big guns are out of the midfield and now he's also out.
Okay, so on that point then, you say take responsibility. Given what he did, now that he's been given a 2-week penalty, do you think that he would apologise to the group for what he did, or
he wouldn't have to, but he might. But we should tell people why. They'll be sitting there going, well, why? What is the difference between Rioli? According to the tribunal, and this was the reason, that he could and should have contested differently and prevented what was a high risk of head injury. That's the determination.
Okay, that's their determination.
Yeah, and that's the way I saw it.
And I didn't, but that's the way it is.
And that's why it is such a hard thing to get your head around. But the bottom line is he's going to be out now for 2 weeks, and not that it's over for them, but it's going to make it a lot harder, isn't it? He's such an important player.
Yeah, well, Cripps is 5th in the AFL Coaches Award voting, so he's right up there still.
I take it back.
Yeah, you should.
He may very well be.
He's only just behind Tuke Miller, Lockie Neal, Clayton Oliver and Christian Petrarca, and it's going to be very tight at the top. So he's on 75 votes for the Coaches Award. The leader's on 88. He's now going to miss 2 games, so it could be very much in the frame to win the Brownlow.
How good for Queensland?
They can't win the Brownlow, but in the Brownlow voting.
How good for football in Queensland that the people who are leading the AFL Coaches Association MVP are both Queensland, playing up in Queensland.
Yeah, what about that?
Tuke
What
Miller and
about that?
Lockie Neal.
A great observation from you. Josh Kennedy retired yesterday. He will be remembered as one of the great Sydney Swans midfielders of all time, would he not?
It's a beautiful CV to retire on. Premiership, captain, 3-time All-Australian, 3-time Best and Fairest winner, AFL Coaches Award, and the most contested possessions in VFL AFL history. No one's had any more contested. And what about the people behind him? Ablett Jr., Dangerfield and Selwood.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's a fair resume.
That's right. And one of those guys, when they stepped out to play, would give his best each and every week. Like, I don't think his performance would ever have dropped below like a 7, 8 out of 10, like effort-wise, ever.
When you retire, you got to retire. You should, it's always hard when you retire because this is the thing you've known and done and loved and spent your whole life, which has been for Josh. But there would be few that could retire more satisfied that he squeezed a lemon. The only thing that failed him towards the end was his body.
That's right. Yeah.
His mind would take him to the places that, as we just said there, more contested footy than anyone else. We put such a premium on contested ball. Well, there's the bloke who's been the best at it in the history of the game.
And add this to it too. He could have almost, or should have, won the Norm Smith medal in 2016. If they had have won, he probably would have won the medal. Jason Johannesson got 10 votes, Josh Kennedy 8, Tom Boyd 7 and Liam Picken 5. So he played at his best when it counted most as well for Sydney.
Well, a career.
Great career. A great career.
As we said, he's retiring at the end of the year. The chances of him playing with on the back of the 2 massive hamstrings are absolutely slim, but he's going to keep presenting himself and who knows? You just never do know, depending on how far Sydney go. The big story for me, or the most interesting, a lot of these stories you go, well, of course, Josh Kennedy, we knew that was happening. And then Melbourne, Jay Clark broke the story that Melbourne are into or are speaking to.
Have spoken to.
Brodie Grundy about, I would imagine, filling the void that they suspect. You wouldn't be talking to him if you didn't think that Luke Jackson's going. So let's just put that to the one side because it's no good talking to him if they might hold out a hope that Luke's staying, and on the off chance, Brodie, what's the chances of you? How do you see that? Is that something that and the other
what
side
smart
of it,
clubs do?
Does Collingwood go? We're happy for not happy, but if Brodie's going to go somewhere, we don't want him to go to a contender. We want him to go somewhere that's not going to be a contender against us, who are hopefully, competing for a fight. What's your reaction? What's your first gut reaction to hearing that?
Well, I think it's just smart. A football club losing one of their young ruckmen and replacing it as best they can, as quick as they possibly can. Like that, that's smart. That's exactly what they should do. I just wonder, though, how he and Maxi Gawn, if they were to recruit,
that's
how
my
they
next question.
how they would work in tandem, those two.
That was my gut reaction.
Because generally there's one ruckman who is dominant and sits above the other ruckman. Mm-hmm. Although in Melbourne's case, it's been a little bit more about the different ways their two ruckmen play and what they bring to the game.
Yeah, and there's also a needs basis that Max is got to go forward and try and clunk a mark, which Melbourne's forwards can't do, a big contested mark. So,
but has Grundy ever demonstrated that, or has he not demonstrated that because he's been required to play more on the ball as opposed to going forward?
Well, that's the thing, you know. I look at it and go, maybe they see Max transitioning a bit more to that forward role, and they would do that with Luke Jackson. But Luke, you know, if he goes, then they're thinking, well, Grundy comes in and becomes more the 60-40 ruckman, and Max is the 40-60 maybe.
Right.
I don't know. That's it was news to me when I heard that and read that from Jay Clark, so I'm trying to get my head around it.
It is an insight, though, too, isn't it, that there are a lot of discussions going on around now about with players. Like we know, Zerhard's been reported, and we know De Goey's been meeting with clubs as well. So there are a lot of discussions, clandestine type meetings that are currently taking place out there. And everyone in footy is saying that this will be the busiest pre-national draft trade period in the history,
which has been said before, but I think that's real this year. If you just now, then Melbourne, I wouldn't think it could pay the 950 or a million, whatever Grundy's on. So Collingwood would have to.
Why though?
What do you mean why?
Well, obviously they would have been offering Jackson a lot of money.
Not that much.
What would they be offering him? Do you think 700?
Yeah, maybe.
They'd have to go at least that deep.
Yeah. So they'd have to have Collingwood pay some of the deal, right?
Mm.
If you're a Melbourne fan or if you're a footy fan, what would be better for him, Grundy or De Goey? If you were to target a Collingwood person in this instance, which is a better fit, Grundy or De Goey?
It's a needs basis, though, isn't it?
Well, the need is
if Jackson goes, the need is for them to be able to replace Jackson.
And they've got a massive need in their forward half.
Yeah, they have, but it might be that player's not available now, so they go for the one that is available potentially in Grundy, and then they go to the draft and they try and find themselves a young forward.
De Goey's said to be available. He's as available as Grundy.
Yeah, but do you see De Goey as a forward or do you see him as a midfielder?
Well, you could see between he and Petrarca, you'd get a damn good one of both.
Oh, no, you would. I mean, he'd fit into that team nicely in some capacity. Taylor Walker, what is it that you want to talk about regarding Taylor Walker this morning?
I was just trying to remember back to the day when this camp stuff, we haven't talked too much about this. Taylor was defensive about the camp.
Now they're doing everything humanly possible to make sure that they apologise and they smooth out any differences that players have with the club and each other, that type of thing. Which a lot of people say, well, it's a bit late for that, but it's never too late to apologise, is it?
No, it's not. But you've got to have good crisis management people, don't you?
Well, of course you do.
At your club, when these things happen. You've got to be able to anticipate. You've got to be able to see, you've got to be 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. And, I think Roo, if he had his time again on the day after this all broke on his radio station where he just sort of basically said, I hope Eddie can move on. All those sort of statements now come back and bite you on the backside. So let's hope that they can find some peace and resolution, all those players. And I don't know whether there'll be more players that come in. Maybe there'll be more that come in now. We've got legal action too being spoken about as well. So I don't think it's particularly going away.
Talking about resolution, do you think the Port Adelaide and Collingwood Football Club have found a peaceful resolution and a satisfactory revolution about wearing the prison bar jumpers?
So the report is...
Very kind offer from Collingwood.
From Ralphie that Collingwood said, look, we'll let you wear the teal jumper in the derby. But black and teal.
The prison bar jumper.
The prison bar. Black and teal, not black and white. How do you reckon that'll go down?
Oh, that's not what they're after.
Do you think that's what they're after?
No, they're not after that.
Do you care? Well, who do you? It's not for us to care. We're not.
Yeah, but that's that's one of the oldest, proudest football clubs in the land. Like, I can't see why you can't acquiesce to what it is that they want to do for one game.
But you're not a Collingwood person.
Well, I know I'm not a Collingwood person, but I'm a lover of the game, and I think that anybody that loves the game would see that that is a reasonable thing that they're requesting.
I do too, but it's hard for us to get, and maybe Collingwood fans, let us.
I don't reckon the average Collingwood fan would give
a
a tinker's cuss about this.
Well, let us know.
Honestly, I don't think they would.
An average Collingwood fan, do you just say tinker's cuss or no tinker's cuss? Only, in fact, a week and a half of the AFL season left for 9 teams in actual fact. So all of the other manoeuvrings are starting in earnest. A week and a half for 10 teams, sorry.
Right.
A week and a half for 10 teams, and for the other 8, or so.
Oh, here we go.
A week and a half for 10 teams. So then the other competition's on in earnest, and that is the manoeuvrings, the drafts, the trades, the clandestine meetings that are taking place. And as someone's rightly pointed out, is it not illegal to sit down with a contracted player if, in fact, that's what happened in the Grundy case?
I would have thought so.
You can talk to the manager. You absolutely can talk to
You
a
can't
manager.
meet with I don't think you're allowed to meet with a player from another club while they're under contract, are you? Is there some rule? There must be. There should be some rule in our game
There isn't.
that prevents that. If we were to put a GoPro, I don't know, a tiny little one. I've watched a lot of different shows. Like you can put sort of tracing things on people and that type of thing.
Yeah.
If we were to put one of those on a AFL recruiting person at this time of the year,
Yes.
what do you think it might produce?
Oh, if it's my recruiter at my club, I hope he's doing everything that's pushing the boundaries.
And who he's meeting with?
Yeah, he's meeting with everyone. That everyone is on the radar, and he's knocking on every door of every manager and just asking the question.
And the manipulation is a strong word.
Well, it is a strong word.
But you've also got a manager, say like a Paul Connors and Robbie Durazio, their management company, and there are a number of players that are being discussed at the moment, and they're right in the middle of it, which would put them right in the middle of pretty much every conversation that is going on around those players and other clubs as well.
Building blocks, they're little pieces.
That's
in the puzzle.
And they're powerful because they get the opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe we'll move you over here. We'll move you back into here.
Well, you
can go over here, and they give the club the inside running as to who they can recruit.
Well, if they sit down with TLA, who are the biggest player, and they'd be the next biggest, they could do the whole thing between the two of them.
Well, this is the conversation. These are the conversations that would currently be taking place, and they are powerful. Like these player managers are really powerful, super powerful.
Give us some examples of clubs that have met players whilst they've been in contract. So one that's come through here, the Cats flew famously to Adelaide
To meet with Danger?
meet with Travis Boak.
Yes, and previous to that, though, when they did the Danger deal, they did that too. But those deals,
Dusty tour GWS?
Yeah, but players will have, some of these players that we find move clubs at the end of this season may have been in discussion with that club for a couple of years, on and off. Yeah, I mean, GWS, they've been mentioned regarding recruiting Brodie Grundy as well, but there's one major problem they've currently got, and that is that they don't have a coach. I mean, that's going to be the first thing that any prospective recruit wants to know about.
And they're shedding players because of their salary cap issues. That's what they're doing. So if they're shedding now because they've got salary cap issues, and then it was having to take on someone like Brodie, they might have to shed even harder. I don't
Geelong
know.
has been mentioned in all this too. They are doing something magical with their numbers and their figures, aren't they? Because apparently they can afford Brodie Grundy because they've got salary cap space. How do they do that?
It's a known fact that they take less to play down.
Well, the players must take a lot less.
Well, Danger at his absolute prime should have been a $1.2, $1.3 million player.
Yep. And Jeremy Cameron, they recruited him and not so long ago.
Yes, I don't know how much money these blokes get, but I think Joel, throughout his journey, would have foregone hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to stay there.
You can only keep one.
Which one?
Grundy or De Goey? Who do you keep?
For Collingwood?
Yeah.
If you're Collingwood? I would keep probably De Goey.
Because?
He's got more strings to his bow.
Right, so you're saying that he's more important to Collingwood than Grundy, and they've got Cameron and Mason Cox. And...
Yeah, they've proven that they've got Cameron and Cox. I'm not convinced that I think Cameron's going to be a really good ruckman, but to go, he can go forward and he can go into the middle. He's a match winner. And Brody at his best has question mark over whether Brody can get back there. Anyway, that's the way I would be going.
Somebody's also pointed out that Collingwood acquiesced to the NBA referees around the world.
You're going to get yourself into trouble. Patrick Cripps, has it divided the footy world, or do we just accept it as one of those decisions that can sometimes go either way?
I think it's divided 17 fan groups to one fan group. I think Carlton fans are pretty passionate about it, and you can understand why when they're already missing a few key players, and then you throw Cripps into that as well. They've got today to decide whether they want to appeal it, which you wouldn't rule that out completely given the route you've seen some clubs take previously. But at this stage, he's going to miss the last two games, Patrick Cripps, and the submission from the tribunal at the end of all of it last night, Gaz, was that while they tried to compare the Willie Rioli one, the difference was this wasn't a marking contest, and Cripps, engaged in what they described as a bumping action. So he cops 2 weeks with high contact and looks set to miss those last two games.
Yeah, they determined he had another play at the another play on the ball as opposed to the man, and that's so you're saying that right now they haven't ruled out going again to the next stage.
I've put a text in to the club. They haven't got back to me as yet, which usually suggests they might be weighing things up. But okay. I think it would be unlikely, but you wouldn't rule it out given what clubs have done and given how important he is. It could be the difference when a finals berth or not.
Just quickly, koalas are not bears too. I'm glad we're
colloquially there.
They are not a bear. Dyson Heppel, Sam Edmonds talked about this yesterday. He said that there was a 4-year deal on the table, 2 to play, 2 as a coach beyond that at the Gold Coast Suns. What can you tell us about the links to Dyson Heppel? I know everybody sort of chased it up yesterday. Is there anything further you can add to that story?
I was out there at Essendon yesterday chatting to Dyson as he left, as you do with these sort of stories, Tim. And he didn't give much away. He admitted that it was, to paraphrase, it was still on a knife's edge. He said he's not sure which way it will play out, Dyson Heppel, which doesn't give Essendon fans the most of confidence that he will stay. I think what through this process would be happening right now is that he's got a 1-year deal from Essendon. He's going to be offered 2 years from Gold Coast, and whatever coaching component is thrown in comes after that. But I think in an ideal world, Dyson would get either a straight 2 years from Essendon, which would allow him to stay, or even a 1-year option with a trigger. So he might need 11, 12, 15 games, something like that, to reach a second year. So I think he's just holding out hope to see what happens with Essendon. It's not dissimilar to the one last year with Robbie Tarrant, where he was at North Melbourne. He was offered 1 year all year, and then the ruse came late with a 2-year deal. By that stage, it was too late. He'd jumped to go to Richmond. So I guess there is a timeline. There is a tipping point at some stage, but Dyson Heppel, I don't think, is there just yet. He's waiting to see if Essendon up their offer.
Jay Clark from the Herald Sun broke the story that Melbourne were interested in Brodie Grundy. What was your thoughts on that?
I was a bit surprised given the money they've got tied up in a lot of other players. We know the midfielders, you've got Max Gawn as well. Jake Lever and Stephen May aren't cheap. And then they've got Ed Langdon on a long-term contract as well. If they were able to fit Brodie Grundy in and not have Collingwood chew up too much of that contract, it would be a piece of list management genius. But the fact that they have met with him gives it some clout, I guess. And you look at the situation around Brodie Grundy having met with the Giants, having met with Melbourne at a minimum as well. It just shows how proactive his management is, that they're on the front foot, that while Collingwood hasn't officially put him on the table yet, that they're getting ahead of the game, that we're only 2 weeks away from finals and these things can move quickly. So they'll get on the front foot, meet with these clubs and give themselves the best understanding.
Hey, Mitch, as a journalist, what's your understanding about we were talking about this. What's your understanding about talking to players directly that are under contract at another club? Is it against any rule in the game?
There is no rule as such, Tim. And a quote from Graham Wright sticks out to me from trade period 3 or 4 years ago in saying that while it's not the best of practice and we all know it goes on, you've just got to get on with it and do it, because if you're not doing it, then the 17 other clubs will be, and you're going to be missing out on world's best practice around getting players in the door. The Lin Jong one was a famous one all those years ago. I know Travis Boak flew to Adelaide, and that was a big one at the time, but he was out of contract. I don't think it happens every day at footy clubs, and we do our best to find them, Tim. But I think it does go on, and when they are unearthed, it's just I guess a smaller percentage of the ones that are actually happening behind the scenes.
We know Patrick Dangerfield has had a scan on his calf. It didn't show anything significant there. But is it worth the risk? Do you think the Cats will take that risk and play him, or do you think, given that there's a couple of games to go and then there's a bye, that they'll be super conservative?
He's pretty adamant that he'll play this game, being his 299th, and then play the last game at home against West Coast at GMHBA as his 300th him. But I'm with you. Get on a flight up to Gold Coast with pretty much top spot already sewn up. Is there a risk there? Absolutely. And I heard him speaking with Jared Waitley yesterday, talking about the paranoia that's going to come with that. Is he going to be in a scenario now where 40, 50 minutes before every game when he's warming up, he'll be thinking of that same moment that he had on the weekend against St Kilda, where he felt his calf tighten up and he couldn't release that pain on deceleration. So I think it's one the Cats have to weigh up. He had a running session Monday. He didn't do much at training yesterday. Let's see how much he does on the track today. But he's pretty keen to put his hand up and play.
What's anything going around from a coaching point of view? What's the very low? I know you've got your finger on every single pulse out there. What's happening with the coaches?
Try to make some calls on it yesterday, Gaz. The only sentiment that I get is that Alistair Clarkson is likely to make his decision before the end of the home and away season. So I think we're going to know by next Friday. I think we'll have some sort of a better understanding or a decision from Alistair Clarkson as to where he goes. If Port Adelaide wants to get into that race, they may need to make a call on Ken Hinkley, but I think that's looking increasingly unlikely after yesterday.
And the Kangas all in on him? Are they all
absolutely.
in, not talking to one other coach?
Not talking to one other coach. They haven't even formed a subcommittee. The interesting part of this is Sonia Hood leading the whole scenario, where usually in this situation you compare it to the Giants with their CEO, Dave Matthews. He's been at the forefront of this. So what that means for Ben Amafio will leave question marks if it is Alistair Clarkson who comes in. The fact that Sonia, as president, has been driving this single-handedly. Let's see if Alistair Clarkson lobs at Arden Street what that means for Ben Amafio, the CEO, given he's had not much part to play in this Alistair Clarkson pursuit. Excellent
report. As always, we appreciate you jumping on and giving us some of your very valuable time, Mitch.
Thanks, guys.
Mitch Cleary.
Thanks, Mitch.
Number one man.
Nice bit of work.
A lot of people want us to get back to the bear debate. I've made a decision to say that we can revisit that.
Are you prepared to retract your remarks from earlier or not?
I think it's important to a lot of people that we establish it, so we'll get back to it. No question about that. Big Mick wants to know. Oh no, not Big Mick, just Mick. The $35 reserve seat we spoke about he said, is that for children or adults? That's adults, Mick.
Yeah, and you say that it applies for the first two rounds of the finals, don't you? They're general admittance tickets.
I don't say. I'm actually telling you that's the case.
That's right, but you're reading that from somewhere.
Yeah, so that's just a reserve seat, $35, Mick. That's for adults. So I think that's pretty good value.
If I was Patrick Dangerfield and there was any tiny inclination that he had some calf soreness, what benefit is it to him to play this week or next week, or what? You want him for the last month of the season, the finals.
Everything they've done, Geelong, suggests that they've got their eyes on the most important time of the year. So conservatism will be the play here. Not wise words from the Yoda.
There's nothing worse than a dicky calf, Gary.